It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley. Welcome to our Thursday. Gary, what do you know?
Well, it was a busy day yesterday.
First, we want to discuss information the committee has learned since our last press conference in November. New information investigators have uncovered regarding the transfer of money from foreign entities to the Biden family. Many of the wire payments occurred while Joe Biden was vice president and leading the United States efforts in these countries. First instance, while Vice President Biden was lecturing Romania on anti-corruption policies, in reality he was a walking billboard for his son and family to collect money. Hunter Biden and his associates capitalized on a lucrative financial relationship with a Romanian national who was under investigation for and later convicted of corruption in Romania. The Bidens received over $1 million for the deal. And 16 of the 17 payments to their associates' account that funneled the Biden's money occurred while Joe Biden was vice president.
There you go. And the press conference was held yesterday, and of course they didn't do what we told them to do, which they put out the graphs later on, and that's what you wanted to do. You wanted to have it behind you, the big graph behind you, have everybody off to the side. For example, where it shows the money coming in that was related to President Xi,
right.
that's from China.
Right.
That's where you put that money flow chart right there, so everybody can see in the back. And then as you're talking about it, you're playing slides that come up in the broadcast, actually showing the money flow chart. And they didn't do that. Why they put together what, to anybody who isn't paying attention, well, I mean, I wanted to see what was happening, but basically it was just a press conference where 5 or 6 of the people talk, throw out the allegations, but don't give you any other type of visual that is easy to understand. And it's amazing that they go through all of this work of an investigation and they blow the stupid stuff that's so easy to do, because that's what you wanted. Now, you had the Democrats come out. I mean, I look at that, and that's something that I criticize. I don't know. I don't believe probably when you look at the entirety of what happened yesterday that it's as big as of a deal of how it hit me the moment that I saw it, when I saw the press conference, because a ton of other things came out. It was not a good day, for the president. You had the story come out about the spokesperson, and his relation to the letter, the 51 intelligence officials that signed that letter, that the Biden White House was actually tipped off to that, so they knew that it was coming. So this wasn't something that was organic at all, and so you started moving on that. You had Democrats come out and say, well, Comer is cherry picking, Raskin, a few others. But when you see, if the Democrats had a strong point, I think that the points that are made by the Republicans are strong points, and Americans are concerned. Why is all this money flowing in? What is the business that the president is in? And one of the first questions was, because you knew this was going to be the case, well, what about Trump? And he said, he goes, look, I might not agree with the business deals that they did, but I can tell you what business they're in. Can you tell me what business the Bidens are in?
This is one thing that Byron Donalds was good at yesterday in pointing to that. He did a couple of times yesterday, but especially toward the end as he came up to the podium. But those are the things that you have to demonstrate, and it's a very clear picture for everybody to see. If you're denying it, if you just want to say, and by the way, if you believe that there's any wrongdoing in Trump's business, you've had decades to go through. If you're in the media, you've had decades to come through it. And certainly you've had the past several years to comb through it since he began his campaign for president back in 2015. So I'm not sure why you didn't look into that if you're so concerned about it, if that is your argument. What the Republicans missed yesterday was an opportunity, but it doesn't mean that opportunity is gone completely.
Right.
They did put out some stuff in the middle of the day, but I think there has to be maybe a greater demonstration, and maybe they use that. I don't know. I don't know where they would do it. Social media, maybe, but it doesn't mean that opportunity is over. It also doesn't mean that they'll take advantage of that opportunity, because this really isn't about the political side of it. The question is this president compromised? And one of the things yesterday with the FBI basically denying the subpoena for the documents, Comer made the point that, well, now the FBI has acknowledged that it does exist.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's a positive. I don't know if I were to have weighted it at this time yesterday, how much weight I would put into, do I believe the FBI is going to turn it over? Probably more likely not going to turn it over. But we knew, and we said, look, Comer's got two roads here, two avenues he can go down. If they do, then we see it. If not, he can point to that. And it's a demonstration for the FBI that they are not anywhere, they're not concerned at all about this whole situation. They've basically said, we're not going to cooperate. This is a confidential program. It will remain confidential. Oversight has no authority here. Well, we'll see about that. We'll see where it goes. But they did acknowledge that document
exists.
Is real.
Right.
We just don't know what it says and all the details.
And we gave the couple of possibilities. We said either they haven't investigated it, so they're not going to release it because it's going to be an embarrassment. Mm-hmm. Because the next question is, all right, are you investigating? This? Are you investigating? Based on what this memo shows about criminal wrongdoing, is there an investigation? And if they say no, or if they just refuse to answer, that is viewed as a cover-up, especially if the document exists. And maybe when they saw the document, they said, oh, we better get on this.
Yeah.
When this became a story, maybe they said, okay, maybe we better. It could be one of those two. Now, the interesting thing is there is no indication now. The Department of Justice wasn't trying to beat Comer to the podium, to announce that Hunter Biden has been indicted. Now, if Hunter Biden is indicted, let's say he is indicted next week, and none of this is a part of it, then it's back a definite positive for the Republicans who can say, you've already admitted this existed. Two things. First off, you admitted that this form exists. We believe the whistleblower. And by the way, this is what you do in closed session. You pull Ray back, and this is what you do in the closed session, where it's all, supposedly top secret, even though the document isn't classified. Mm-hmm. And you basically say, what are you doing? But if they don't indict him, or if they indict Hunter Biden, and there is no talk about the fact that this leads to the president, well, then you can make the case that you're not investigating it, therefore we need the document.
Yeah.
You're worried about whatever you claim it is, that it's going to interfere in the investigation. Are you doing an investigation on the president? That's what you ask in private, in behind closed doors, at the minimum. I mean, you ask it as it was asked yesterday to the FBI director, what's going on, and he wouldn't answer it. We'll have that. The Senate actually had Christopher Wray in front of them yesterday. We had that audio coming up, and he just wouldn't answer. But they're trying to cover it. Sources and methods, all part of an they're covering. I mean, the letter covered every possible scenario of why they couldn't turn it over to the House. Mm-hmm. But the one thing that I noticed was, And it was exactly what I said. I said yesterday. I said, am I going to come in this morning and look at Newsbusters, and Newsbusters is going to say none of the networks carried it? Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what Newsbusters had. None of the networks carried it at all.
Yeah, no shocker.
During now, before people get upset, information gets out just because the news media doesn't cover it. The mainstream media doesn't mean it doesn't get out. We know that it gets out because we know by the polls that America believes that the Biden family has enriched themselves, and that influence peddling is something that they're against. But the fact that they didn't cover it means all the Democrat criticism of the Comer press conference yesterday, they don't feel is strong enough to put on the air.
Yeah. Well,
that's what it means.
They themselves don't have sources working to debunk Comer or the allegations or any of this. Think about that. I mean, this is something that if the GOP, because what you saw yesterday primarily was the GOP. I mean, there was some pushback from the left, but really that was the GOP up there. It was not an official, it was not a situation where the FBI stepped up there with them and everything. It was just the GOP. The liberal media typically would go after them and say, hey, this is where they're wrong. Our sources say this didn't happen. You're not hearing anything at all from the liberal media at all, except them mentioning, some of them, the claims by Comer and Grassley. That's all you're seeing. And why is that? If they could debunk this thing, it would have happened last Wednesday.
And everything from the Democrats was generalities. You're cherry picking this. You haven't identified the specific, crime yet. But they didn't hit any specifics. They didn't say that this money wasn't transferred. They didn't say that and so that's the problem. And when the mainstream media really doesn't cover the story, that means that the Democrat attacks on the Republicans they feel is weak. Otherwise, they would cover it and say the Republicans are trying to set up this president and there's nothing there whatsoever. Mm-hmm. Well, there is something there.
Yeah.
And again, they're trying. Every American knows it. They know it. Every Democrat knows it. What in the world is the Biden family? Why did they get this kind of money from foreign sources? What are they doing? Everybody is concerned with it because one thing that, as we've said before, two things Americans are still bothered by with politicians. General line, no. Not paying your taxes, yes. Influence peddling, yes. Mm-hmm. And that's where the Democrats can't win it. So you have to look for the signs. And I know a lot of, my conservative media friends, how come they're not covering it? How come they're not covering it? Have you not realized yet that they're political activists in the media? Why they're not? But the other reason is, if they covered it, how would they cover it? They would wish to attack the Republicans, and they can't do it, which is why they didn't cover it.
The reason they can't do it is because the information that the Republicans have on the SARS reports and everything is irrefutable. This is not something the Republican Party conjured up. They didn't make this up. They didn't write this. You can't break that down and say, oh, this is wrong, this didn't happen. The only thing you can do if you're an activist in the media is you can say, all right, let's see if that really, if it's what they're telling us at the podium is what this information is. And I think that's why they're quiet, because you'll see that it is. These SARS reports are real. Mm-hmm. And Donald's mentioned, he said, I was in banking. We knew if there were all these, companies that really didn't have, a purpose for existing, and there was all this money moving around, as a bank, you've got to review that. You've got to look at that, and it looks suspicious.
And that's why they put out over 150 suspicious activity reports.
Yep.
Didn't come from the Republicans.
Nope.
It came from the banks based on the law.
Yep.
866-90-RED-EYE.
When it comes to truck maintenance, sometimes it's the little things that can cause the most trouble, like cabin air filters. When properly serviced, cabin air filters provide a barrier between pollutants and harmful particles outside and your HVAC system. If you don't pay attention to them, however, this small part can turn into big trouble in no time. Breathe easy when you know how often to get your filters replaced. Long-haul drivers should replace their cabin air filters every 50,000 miles, or according to the manufacturer's recommendations. If you operate in dusty environments, consider servicing your cabin air filters more often. This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Also coming up here on the show today, the CNN town hall with Trump yesterday. Title 42 ending. Jay Johnson, Obama's Homeland Security Secretary, said that Biden reportedly planning to release migrants without court dates or tracking is not good. It's a big problem. You know, everything that we've been talking about is going to disappear probably after today because the border is just going to be the number one story. When you see, I'll find the audio of somebody, you know, he was shouting questions yesterday, and someone asked, what do you mean that we're going to see chaos on the border? We've had chaos on the border for years. Biden said that. It's like, oh, my God.
Yeah. Wow.
Just like, and so I think this is going to dominate for a while. It could dominate. This could be the topic that dominates all through the summer. And it's not going to be good because the images are going to be there. And everybody, all the networks, everybody's covering this.
Yeah, there's no way around it because yesterday you essentially saw the borders in El Paso and in the Rio Grande Valley sector in Texas, which is basically south of Del Rio, I think all the way down to Laredo. But you see that, and it's what everybody knew. The floodgates are going to be opened. And the Biden administration is doing nothing about it and will do nothing about it. But the problem is something you brought up. You said, you know, one of the things is the local media can have a real impact. But when there's something going on, and this happened a couple of summers ago in Del Rio with the International Bridge there, it's been going on in El Paso. But when the locals get upset and there's a massive problem like this, this is a crisis. There's no way around that. It's beyond crisis. And the imagery of tens of thousands of people crossing the border, or, as was the case in Del Rio, standing underneath the International Bridge waiting to be processed. Processed means they basically get your name and say, okay, you can go. I mean, that's basically what it's come down to. They take their information and release them right there. They're gone. They don't have to report. Who's going to make them? We're not enforcing the border. You think the Biden administration is going to hunt them down inside the U.S. and make them report?
You see the number. You see the number that New York, 1,000 migrants a day into New York City. That
right,
just alone.
Right.
Listening to Red Eye Radio. from the Uniden America Studios.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara, 866-90. Red-Eye, very quickly, not going to spend a lot of time on the CNN thing yesterday. The one thing I noticed is Trump is not saying the election is stolen anymore. He's saying it's rigged. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
He didn't use the word stolen.
Right.
She did. He only used the word rigged.
Yeah, right.
And before she started pressing him, he was stating that it was rigged based on Twitter, based on the fact that the poll that was done that showed that, what was it, 70% of America would have voted differently if they would have known that the Hunter Biden laptop story was real. And so he was saying it was rigged. Now, the interesting thing is when he was pushed later on, he talked about, some of the video that was the suspicious video out there. But it actually, by what he said yesterday, weakened his legal argument. I'm not talking about the legal argument, but the legal argument against former Vice President Pence. Now, we stated and we called it for you. We told you what the Supreme Court would do on that. The Supreme Court defers to the states on elections. States get to run the elections. If there was obvious fraud, which, again, the obvious fraud initially was Smartmatic and Dominion and what happened there. Any other fraud cases have gone through all the states' legal systems. But the fact is, his own case yesterday, and I don't think anybody picked up on this, became weaker when he says that Pence could have, sent it back to the states again, and could have delayed it. Now, we never believed that was the case, knowing the Constitution. There was the debate back and forth on that, but we said, nope, when that gets to the Supreme Court, that's not going to hold any water. And they did exactly what we said they were going to do based on the fact that states get to certify the elections. Federal government really isn't involved in a presidential election, except for the basic ceremony of saying, okay, here we go. And that's the vice president's role. The Supreme Court agreed with us, as did the conservatives on the court. And we said, look, that's the law. You may not like it. You may want to change it, but that's the law. But he didn't say it was stolen anymore, and that's because the argument that Smartmatic and Dominion basically committed what would have been, if it was true, would have been massive fraud, where at that particular point it might have been different in Congress, but there was never any evidence that existed, just allegations, and allegations aren't enough.
Right. Yeah, those are the things, and I wondered because everybody who follows along on a daily basis, we jump right into it. You step away just a few feet. You step back just a minute, and I do wonder what the impact is, and it really just depends on how they're going to shape the campaigns. There's already the Democrats already have a campaign right now going, and I think it's social media, it may be on television as well. Side by side, Trump at rallies since I think most of the shots were from 2022, saying that we're going to treat the people from January 6th fairly, we're going to review it, and if it requires pardons, we will pardon them. I think he repeated that, in fact, on the town hall. And then the side-by-side is on the right. You saw the videos from January 6th. We'll see how much impact that has. The left has had their share of the election was rigged. Trump is not a legitimate president. I don't know that anybody in their mind is going to go all the way back to 2017 when Nancy was saying that in March of 2017. But what I do wonder is, the point I'm getting to is, I wonder how much of it is a wash. And it really depends on how much Trump wants to engage on that issue. Because I do believe it's possible, and that's a big word here, that he could campaign, and if somebody asked him about it, yeah, it's rigged, it's rigged. And rigged is a huge word.
Yeah,
that's another big word. It's an umbrella of a word, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because you can look at it and you can say the Hunter thing, the FBI going to social media, and who knows what we might learn between now and November of next year. So all of those things resonate with people, but it's kind of a populist word that's been used on both sides repeatedly. It's floating around. So in my mind, I think it has really the potential of being a wash, again, depending on whether Trump or anybody else that's running engages in it completely. And really right now, I mean, Trump being in the forefront for the GOP, it's about how much you want to engage. I don't know. I mean, it's early. I don't know how much the CNN town hall, in terms of damage, CNN or the left believes that they were able to put on the former president. I don't know how long-lived it would be if there is any damage, because it really requires Trump to carry that on. I mean, the media is going to do it, but the media is just they're preaching to the choir. Trump is talking to voters, and there's the difference.
But I think it is a problem for him, because in the debates,
it could be a huge problem.
If you see it doesn't matter whether he wishes to address it up front, and this is the concern as we have had about the Republican primaries. The question is going to be asked over and over and over and over again, because nobody on the left picked up the nuance that Trump isn't saying the election is stolen. Mm-hmm. He's saying it's rigged, and to them it's the same thing.
Right.
And so they're going to keep pounding him on it. There will be no other question. And I don't care, you bring in anybody who is in the media who isn't a loyalist of Trump, and they're going to ask the question, and they're going to ask the question at the debate. And just like last night, that became one of the biggest back and forths. It's when he looked at her and said, you're nasty. And so that became the focal point of it.
And that's my point on him engaging. And which is something he has the ability.
But he has to. He believes he has to engage.
Because you saw
the cheers of the people that were there when he engaged in it. So they want him to engage. The Democrats do not want, and this is a trap that that they're setting up for Trump. Mm-hmm. They don't want the public to know and have him to be able to promote the positive things that he did. They want the biggest soundbite of every single debate, and that's why they want in the primary debates. They want everything to be on the fact that Trump is still saying the election is stolen, even if he's saying now it's rigged and not stolen. That nuance is probably lost on most people. I know yesterday that was the one thing I noticed immediately. I go, ooh, he's backed off. All right, let me see. What's he saying the problem? Okay, Twitter, yeah, he's right on that. Was that election interference? Yes. Do you overturn a presidential election because of that? No, it doesn't exist in the law. The 51 intelligence people doing that? No. If Hillary would have won the election in 2016, and it would have been found out during her time that she basically set up that political dirty trick against the president, which is the biggest political dirty trick in American history, or Trump, who would not have been president if Hillary would have won, still that would have not overturned an election because it's not obvious fraud in the actual votes. It may be wrong, but you can lie and you can set somebody up, and that doesn't overturn a presidential election.
Right.
Doesn't overturn elections.
Well, that's
in general.
And that's my point, is that there's no way he's not going to engage.
Yeah, exactly.
You can. There are ways of taking on the toughest questions. There are ways, including the allegations against him from E. Jean Carroll. all the way back to and it was look, those lawyers for E. Jean Carroll, if they didn't bring up the Billy Bush tapes, would not have been, they shouldn't be practicing law, right? I mean, that was a go-to that everybody knew they were going to do that. Mm-hmm. But from the beginning of that, long before these allegations came to the courtroom, it was guy talk. I was trying to make the guy laugh, but the problem is you can't convince him. If you don't, because if you told a joke, right? If you said something where you're trying to make a buddy laugh and you didn't know your buddy or somebody else is recording it, and you tell a joke, and there are some pretty awful jokes out there, you can come back. If that were the case, you come back and you say, look, that was a horrific joke. Probably shouldn't be telling that to anybody, but that's all it was. I would never engage in that kind of behavior. Because you would just be absolutely destroyed that, oh my gosh, I said something really stupid, but I didn't mean it. If you had heard that from the beginning, then that would have, back when he was campaigning, when it came out. And by the way, keep in mind, at the time the Billy Bush tapes came out, they had been around for 11 years. He was a media darling on the left for all that time, and nobody saw that it was a good idea to release those tapes until he was going to run for president. And, there are ways to, we talked about it yesterday. Look, if you're innocent, you are frightened to death that people would even think that you could do something like that. And you behave a very different way, because I would be scared that anybody would believe that about me for a moment.
I think every conservative analyst I've seen have missed what happened at that civil trial. That, they all talk about the fact that he wasn't found liable of rape. Because when you look at it, it was he said, she said. What did they find him liable of? The basically sexual abuse, battery. Mm-hmm. And why that and not the rape? And I believe it's because the jury heard him, in essence, saying that, oh, yeah, this is what stars do to women.
Yep.
And basically,
he was still defending it.
Right. And so
in a court case.
So when you look at it, the rape, they couldn't find him liable of.
Right.
But when he was talking about, because of the Billy Bush tape, the actual sexual assault or sexual abuse, battery, whatever you want to call it, which was, touching, inappropriate that way. Well, he was defending that was okay because that's the way that it works in Hollywood. The one thing they found him liable of was the thing that he said was acceptable to do. He was his own the worst witness in that civil trial was Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. It was mind-boggling when I saw that.
Yeah, the deposition was
just, it was a nightmare. No wonder. The lawyers probably saw the deposition. They knew what the deposition was. Mm-hmm. They were there.
Right. The jury could have found the same without that. Without that deposition, it wouldn't have the political damage that I believe that's going on right now. I don't know how long-lived that is, but potentially this has a lot of damage based on the things he said in that deposition. We'll see.
866-90-RED-I.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-I on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up on the top of the hour, more on the Biden family business, as the Wall Street Journal lead editorial has, and get into that a little bit more, where that may lead. And some other interesting news yesterday out of the White House, knowing about the 51 intelligence officials going to put out that letter. They were given a heads up that it was coming out.
Yeah.
We'll get to that, plus Obama's former director of Homeland Security. Here's a headline. Biden reportedly planning to release migrants without court dates or tracking Jay Johnson. Not good. A big problem on MSNBC. He said that. So.
Well, I mean, it should be no surprise, because what is the next step? And what they're going to say is, well, we were just so overwhelmed that there was no time to process them all unless we pared down the process to taking their name and number and letting them go. That's what you're going to see.
Yep.
There will be no follow-up, no court date. And if there's no court date, then are they here legally? What's their status? Because if you miss a court date, that's one thing. If there's no court date, then what's your status?
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across the USA and around the world, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Download our Red Eye Radio app today. Listen when and where you want. If you can't listen live overnight. So, former Obama Director of Homeland Security Jay Johnson on MSNBC last night, and here he is reacting to the report, the NBC report, that the Biden administration is planning to release migrants without court dates into the country. Here's that little bit of that back and forth.
So we've learned of this memo instructing CBP to begin releasing migrants into the country without court dates. Now, of course, Republicans will point to that and say, look, catch and release. Do you support this move?
That's not good, because even when the numbers are high, ICE should be able to give a migrant a notice to appear at a specific date and a specific place, so that we can track them, and they have an expectation that they have to show up for immigration court. If we're releasing people without giving them NTAs and without tracking them, that's a big problem.
Duh.
Yeah, you think?
But on this, I mean, this is MSNBC, and they're showing video of just thousands.
Yeah.
Of people at the border and walking across and everything. I mean, all of the pictures that hurt the Democrats' cause for promoting illegal immigration and the Biden policy, they're showing on MSNBC. And that's why I believe that everything, probably for the next at least couple of weeks, with Title 42 ending, you're not going to hear as much about the Comer investigation. It'll still be out there, but I think that the videos that we're going to be seeing in the near future from the border is what Americans are going to be paying attention to a lot.
Yeah.
And the media is too, and then with Biden, even Mayorkas, it was going to be, everybody's now, even the Democrats, even the White House is using the term chaos at the border.
Yeah, right. I don't think that they understand what that looks like on them, because they're focused on the Title 42 part. And then all of a sudden, Biden, well, there's been chaos on the border for years. It's this lack of self-awareness. And the local stories are not going away. This is the one thing they're not going to be able to do, is keep the media from these stories. It will be covered by everyone over the next 2 weeks.
I don't know if you can hear the question here. Let me play. I'm going to play this audio. This is Biden where he says, quote, we've had, here's just to give you a preview. I'll read the text. Can you expand on what you meant when you said there's going to be chaos at the border? Say that again. Yeah. Can you expand on what you meant when you say there'd be chaos at the border? Biden, quote, we've had chaos at the border for a number of years. Yeah. I mean, that's mind-boggling. Yeah. Let's play the audio here. See if, now, it may be this, again, it's always tough to hear because, as we know, Biden takes the majority of questions he takes are shouted questions. Mm-hmm. So everybody's shouting. So here we go.
Can you expand on what you meant when you said there's going to be chaos at the border?
Say that again.
Can you expand on what you meant when you said there will be chaos at the border? For how long?
Well, we've had chaos at the border for a number of years.
Zero self-awareness.
No, it just. Hey, what we were told it was secure.
Hey, welcome to the current topics, the current issues, Mr. President.
Let us welcome President Biden to 2023.
That's right. Let's welcome to the border crisis President Joe Biden. That's chaos. Yeah. Now what? I got to go. It's no joke. This is, this is going to. I'm with you. I think this is going to be the story, but especially going into the weekend, as the whole Title 42 thing ends, then Friday and Saturday are going to be massive, and you can expect that a great deal of the focus will be quite possibly on the Sunday morning news shows, even, but over the weekend on the news, it is going to be the story. And over again, the media, has for years, we should welcome everybody. The left media and the left, we should welcome everybody. Even Mayorkas saying recently, well, we're a nation of immigrants. That's probably not where you want to go right now. Because this isn't about legal immigration.
Right.
Here
it is in New York Post. New York City is taking up to 1,000 migrants every day, and that number could increase with tomorrow's lifting of Title 42. You saw that Biden doesn't want Mayor Adams as part of his campaign now.
Right. Yeah, no. Adams is getting hit by everybody on the left.
Right, because they're not happy that he's complaining about what's going on.
Right. AOC went after him.
City officials saying that that number of 1,000 a day into New York City could skyrocket.
Yeah. No, it is going to be big, and not all of that. I think you said it off here, but it's true. Not all of that is going to be from buses coming from Texas.
Oh, no.
Keep in mind, the Biden administration also moves people, usually on planes. But that movement will continue.
Yeah, the only time it became a concern was when the governor started doing
exactly.
it. The Biden administration was already doing it.
Right. And those mayors know that. Who was it? I think it was Adams that said, President Biden, we need your help. And it was like, well, he's sending some of them there.
Yeah.
He is helping.
Yeah, the media in New York made sure that was that was out there, or at least the New York Post did.
Right.
I won't say the media in New York.
Right.
That would be the incorrect. The New York Post did.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that was right on that story was right above a Hollywood starlet in a bikini photo.
I was thinking about that the other day. The New York Post has always kind of had that reputation of, tabloid, type news and the whole thing. Somebody did a bit on it. Oh, I can't think of the comedian that did a bit on it. And it was pretty funny. I think it was John Mulaney. But there is, the situation with Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. Think about it. The New York Post. I mean, they didn't write the story, but they broke the story. It was theirs. Yeah. And in a way, think about that. They were isolated by social media. They were cut off by social media. I mean, it's the scoop of all scoops if it plays out that way. I think it already is. And I know the left loves to take off on the New York Post, but...
No, I think that you can look at Miranda Devine as there's an argument to be made. Now, somebody may bring up a different argument, but I believe there's an argument to be made that she is the number one investigative reporter in the United States.
Yeah. Yep.
Because of that story alone.
Yeah. And what's interesting is others could be doing that work. I know there are others doing the work on the heels of what she's doing or has been or started.
Now, you can say if Catherine Herridge was left to just go, that, she's in that in that top rank.
Everybody, including all the executives at CBS, resigned and left and left only her behind. Right. In the wake of their resignations, no, I think it will be interesting to see where it goes because, again, if this whole thing with the whistleblower falls out and there is a demonstration of a quid pro quo, then that is going to be the entire media can decide they're going to ignore it, but you ignore it, that kind of story at your own peril.
Well, the other thing is the FBI, by not releasing it, because I know I'm expecting to get, they didn't get anywhere yet. They didn't get anywhere yet.
Yeah.
Well, where they're getting somewhere is 36% approval rating for the president. And, that's politically, that's your real goal. I mean, who will be held accountable? We'll see. I don't know. But the longer, what I got out of yesterday is there's a significant number of people that now look at the FBI and the Department of Justice, not just because of that, this document that they will not give, but just in general, everything they've done, that they're a tainted organization. And this gives the Republicans politically an advantage to say, see, they're just corrupt. They're covering for the Bidens. They're not going to. And look, the mainstream media is promoting the stories that Hunter Biden is just going to get a slap on the wrist.
Right.
So they're reporting that, when they report something, it's Hunter Biden, Joe, got nothing to do with Joe Biden, poor Joe, and has to deal with his son as if Joe Biden has nothing to do with anything at all. They're trying to make that, separation. But by the FBI doing it, it just extends this thing out. It's not over today.
Right.
It wasn't over yesterday because we had said if that came out and it was unclassified and it said the FBI is investigating and still is investigating because they've had this document for this particular length of time. The whistleblower knows about it. Sources say the thing keeps growing and growing once you find out. Now we know. Well, the one thing that keeps us going, we know the document is there. There is a document.
Yeah. Yeah.
That the document is there. They didn't say we don't have a document like that.
Right. Right.
And that's what you'd say. We don't no document like this exists.
Right.
You would say that because then it ends it. They didn't do that.
Nope.
So that keeps it going. And like I said, the key is when you see, because I know a lot of my friends, conservative media friends, were like, CNN's not covering it, and well, the networks probably won't carry it. Yeah, but that tells you something. That tells you that when the Democrats come out and start criticizing and saying the Republicans are cherry picking, that the media isn't jumping behind the Democrats because then they have to report the story.
Right.
And they don't want to report the story.
Right. They have to go to work, at the very least, to try and disprove what Comer is saying. I mean, that would be their first effort, is to go after Comer, discredit Comer and quite possibly the whistleblower in some way, and trash all of this in a big way, but they haven't done that.
Right. And then you have a debate going on about whether Joe Biden, because the debate isn't really going on, but the debate then starts if the media starts covering it. And now with the Democratic politicians jumping on board and trying to defend Biden, or maybe not defend Biden, but criticize the Republicans, you open up the debate, and that's what you want.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's how you get more to the truth. That's how you challenge people. The Democrats being silent, where do you go? You make your accusation. Nobody covers it. It's silent. But now that the Democrats are coming out and attempting to attack, this is where the debate begins. And when it happens and the media doesn't cover it, you realize at that point they don't believe they can sell that even, well, they don't believe they can sell it to the independents who may still be purchasing their media product. That's what's going on.
Right.
That it's a tough thing. It's just too tough to sell.
Right.
And so what a day it was yesterday. And there's more. I mean, now that the one Biden spokesperson now been we'll get to the story here in a little bit. The one Biden spokesperson that knew about that the White House knew about the letter coming out from the 51 officials before it came out.
Mm-hmm.
And this ties right back. Everything ties right back to the White House on this. And every single day, I mean, when that story came out, I went, wow. And then the FBI won't give the statement. Everything is bad every single day for the Biden administration.
Yeah,
there is no good.
There are no wins.
There's no wins. And so even though I wasn't pleased, I thought they could have done a better job with graphs and slides, made it very simple for people to understand. And it's a lot better than just different Republicans speaking, because then it comes across as just allegations. When you put that flow chart up there, as they put the flow chart on social media, the money flow chart, they put it up after.
Yeah.
It's like, no, do it while you're there so people take pictures of that. The media will take pictures of that graph.
Yeah, right.
And the internet will take many more pictures of that graph.
Yep.
Because that's where
the visual is going to help you, because it allows people to explore what you're claiming for themselves. They can look at it. It's easily taken in and absorbed in their minds if they can see it.
Yep.
And you didn't have that visual.
866-90 Red Eye.
Most owner-operators leased to larger carriers are paid on a per-mile basis or a percentage of revenue per load. The per-mile basis is most prevalent among larger fleets, percentage at smaller. Pay per mile tends to dominate discussions about pay just because it's easier to measure, and pay per mile often is wrongly used as the deciding factor in leasing to a carrier. While pay per mile can be a vital factor, it's not a cure for every ill, nor does it mean a big settlement check is coming an owner-operator's way. Why? Because pay per mile always must be considered in balance with gross revenue as well as total costs. Gross revenue can include flat mileage pay that varies by length of haul, percentage revenue pay, and more. Most importantly, though, for every revenue dollar generated, only part of that dollar is profit. But for every extra dollar of cost saved, the entire dollar contributes to profit. Knowing and understanding your cost to operate is fundamental to understanding the true value of any pay package. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Shell Rotella. Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. He's Eric Harley. And the inflation numbers here, I love, the spin that you see on it, and just some of the headlines out there. Inflation getting much better. There's still problems out there. I think that the analysis from the critical thinkers out there, the critical thinker economist, is what you got out of that. Yeah, it was inflation slightly down. Core inflation still strong. There is a belief that this means that inflation is going to be strong all the way through 2024. That's the analysis that I got out of it.
Right. There is no reason to believe that you're going to get, I don't even know anybody targeting below 3%, before the end of the year. Core inflation is still very high.
The fourth branch of government. Eric Harley and Gary McNamara on Red Eye Radio.
And I'm Gary. He's Eric. Good morning. Let's go straight to the House of Representatives yesterday, and Representative Chip Roy from Texas on the situation at the border.
Mr. Speaker, we have a crisis at our southern border that has captured the attention of the American people, but has fallen on deaf ears among my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, and much more importantly, the president and the administration at the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue. Just yesterday, I received a text from multiple law enforcement officers along the southern border, whether it's with the Department of Public Safety from Texas, whether it's with Border Patrol. For example, this was a quote, "As of last night, the radios went crazy for West and South Laredo. Waves of folks, literally just group after group, bum rushing the border. The agents were spread thin as hell. In my precinct, we're literally all doubled up because our units are breaking down every other day. Ranchers are calling every other day stating there are folks on their property, but we can't get there fast enough. I hate to say this, but we're getting our rear ends handed to us. I used to have patterns, trends, and knew the drop-off pickup areas, but now it's a expletive free-for-all. Approximately 600 bodies at the Lavarios Gate, just half a mile east from Yarborough, happening right now in El Paso. I've got hundreds of these texts right now flooding into my phone, like every other member of Congress, because what is happening is an abject failure at the border. And it is a humanitarian crisis for Americans and for migrants. 5 million have been encountered at the southern border. 2 million have been released into the United States, incentivizing more to come. Over 1.5 million have evaded apprehension, i.e. gotaways, evading detection from Border Patrol since the beginning of this administration. Fentanyl pouring into our communities. Border Patrol has seized over 35,000 pounds of fentanyl. Just last Thursday morning, I met with 3 fentanyl moms, one of dozens of moms that I've met with because their children have died from fentanyl. 8 children in the school district in the county in which I reside, southwest of Austin, have died of fentanyl poisoning since last August. Over 10 have had to be resuscitated, revived with Narcan. Just last summer, 53 migrants effectively cooked in a tractor trailer in the hot Texas heat in San Antonio, Texas. 856 dead migrants, bodies found along the Rio Grande and in South Texas and on ranches. Little girls sold into the sex trafficking trade, held in stash houses in Laredo and Brownsville and El Paso and San Antonio and Houston and throughout this country. We know this to be true. It is documented to be true. And now the administration can't even keep up with the children that we have, with 85,000, according to the New York Times, not able to be contacted. And then my colleagues just blithely wipe that away, saying, oh, that's not true. It was a phone call. They didn't get them. They must be with a family member. What member of this body would treat their child that way? Oh, I called and didn't get a hold of them. Oh, well. But we do that with 85,000 children? I guess that's not nearly as effective as a photo op in white pantsuits sitting next to kids in cages, alleged, despite those cages were created by the previous administration specifically for the protection of children. But oh no, it doesn't look as good to have a photo op when you've got 85,000 missing children. And tomorrow, Title 42 expires. Now, for the average American, Title 42 is just something, they don't know what that is. What it is a part of our health code that allows us to say that we're going to turn people away in the middle of a pandemic. Yet the administration has been using that as effectively their only means of managing the border, to the extent you could call it managing the border. In March, for example, there were approximately 200,000 apprehensions. We're going to blow right through that right now because we're at 10, 11, 12,000 apprehensions a day. But when you have those 200,000 apprehensions, not even counting all of the parole, half of those were being turned away under Title 42. But when Title 42 expires tomorrow, more will come. There's an explosion at the border. None will be turned away because this administration has specifically chosen to ignore the law. And this administration is refusing to do their job to defend the border of the United States. The least compassionate, the least Christian, the least empathetic thing that a country could do is to allow human beings to be used as political pawns by cartels for profit, while Americans die by the thousands, while migrants get raped and abused and put in stash houses by cartels for profit by the thousands, while migrants die along the southern border by the hundreds, if not the thousands now, while our own people get overrun, their own ranches. I've sat and met with the ranch owners in South Texas who have to run across finding a dead body of a young woman, a mother with a baby on their ranch. Imagine, in the most powerful nation in the history of the world, thinking it's compassionate to have a system that allows that. But yet that is precisely what we do. Unfortunately, what my colleagues' response will be is, we're going to have to do something about our immigration system and future flow and figuring out what we're going to do to make sure that we reform immigration. Don't you know, if we had comprehensive immigration reform, this would all just magically evaporate? Completely not true. The fact of the matter is, the starting point for any sensible border and immigration plan is a secure border in which you actually enforce the laws of the United States. Why? So people know what the rules are. We allow 600,000 to 1 million and 1.2 million, depending on the year, people to come into this country legally, as we should. Yes, we need to reform our immigration system, but none of it matters if we're going to embrace lawlessness and wide open borders and ignore the rule of law to the detriment of people and to the detriment of the very system that attracts people from around the world. We should be exporting the rule of law rather than importing lawlessness, fentanyl, death, and destruction.
Chip Roy yesterday on the House floor. I don't know where I disagree.
Yeah, he touched on something that has been going on that has really been increasing lately, but it's been going on certainly since the Biden administration has kind of opened the floodgates, and we're going to see more of this, quite unfortunately, and that's the ranchers in South Texas. Watching some of the listings of ranches and everything else, and you see where not just the families that own ranches, some of the smaller ranches, but also some of the larger corporate ranches that have been put up for sale because they just can't deal with that anymore. If it's a corporate ranch, they feel like they're safe, their workers aren't safe. If it's a family ranch, they feel like their home is being invaded, which it is, because our government is doing nothing. And then the very sad scenario that Roy points out here of a mother and child dying on a ranch because they didn't have, food, water, whatever it is. And that happens more often than you would want to believe. Having so many friends in the Border Patrol, It boggles my mind how you get up every day and go out and do the job. I mean, right now, I know the calling because they've told me that. They believe in the mission statement, and I know they still do. But my gosh, I can't imagine what it's like to have your hands tied repeatedly and to have that mission statement shredded by this administration and to tell you that, sorry, that's not why you're here. We're gonna treat it differently. And this whole Title 42 thing falling this week is demonstrating just that. I mean, you heard Jay Johnson.
On MSNBC.
On MSNBC. This is not a good thing. There has to be, and not that I have confidence in people showing up for a court date, but if you're not going to, you got to ask the question. If the person comes through, you take their information, you don't give them a court date. They're not essentially going to, and I know they're not going to track them down otherwise, but if they had a court date, they missed that court date, if they stay longer, they are here illegally. We are a nation of laws. Now, I think the enforcement should be much tougher than it has been during the Biden years.
And for people that don't know, we had brought this up last hour that the NBC report, not Fox, but or Newsmax or any other conservative media outlet or Tucker Carlson on Twitter.
Yeah.
But it was NBC saying that from what their report was that they're just going to allow illegal immigrants into the country without finding out who they are and not giving them a court date, so they have to show up.
Right.
We don't know where they're going. We don't know how to contact them.
Right.
There's going to be so many people crossing the border. They're just going to open it up. So the gotaways will actually be not gotaways, but allowed in.
The let them goes.
The let them goes. Yeah, I like that. The let them goes.
I mean, because
as
that's
you
it.
said, that's terrible. That's bad. This is on MSNBC. They're having this discussion.
Right.
This is how bad this is going to be right now. And I think one of the biggest things is where you see Mayorkas is panicking. This is going to be a problem now. You've got Biden saying, well, it's been a crisis at the border for years.
Yeah.
What? That's not what you've been telling the American public.
Right.
I mean, it's amazing. And then you wonder if they're panicking just how bad it's going to get during the summer, now that this is the time when, because it's warmer out, that more people will cross the border.
Right.
What is it going to be like? There were the figures out last week that you were getting from some sources inside the Border Patrol that there's 750,000. Now I saw there's 175,000 that are right near the border ready to cross, and there's hundreds of thousands coming in. I don't know what the total amount is, the latest total, but the 750,000 was about 4 or 5 days ago. They said are ready to come into the country. When you see, the story out of the New York Post, 1,000 migrants a day right now just into New York City alone.
Right.
Just New York City. 1,000 a day, and they believe, city officials believe, after Title 42 is gone, that's going to skyrocket. This may be the time in history where illegal immigration actually becomes a huge issue.
A serious conversation
issue like it has not been over the last, really, 40 years.
You make a really good point, and to add to that, part of that will be in part because right now as a country we don't want more legal immigration. No one, even on the left, they're not saying, hey, more work visas. No, they're not doing that. Now, we know that the far left wants open borders, and their commander-in-chief, their president that they elected, is making that happen, but they're learning that the people of New York City don't want this. When you've got the liberal media acknowledging how bad this is, what does that tell you? Well, they're being overrun in their city. They've got a rise in crime. Now they've got people from other nations coming here into their city at 1,000 per day in New York alone. Well, you may talk all you want and say, well, we're a nation of immigrants, or where those debates are old and nobody's using them aside from this administration. And the people of New York City are not going to let the liberal media get away with that kind of behavior. They want something done about this.
866-90-RED-EYE.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up following the top of the hour, more on the Biden business. We'll get to that.
Welcome to Biden's.
What the Democrats had to say. More on James Comer talking last night about it. More on Title 42 going away today and what problems that's going to cause at the border. Look at some of the inflation numbers and a whole bunch more.
You know, Biden could put on a crown, you know, like in Seinfeld, instead of the Wiz, the Prez. Nobody beats the Prez. Come down for this weekend's sale.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across the USA and around the world, we are Red Eye Radio. Good morning. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. We made it to a Thursday. More on Title 42 and the chaos that's going to cause at the border, and really not just at the border, but all across the United States. When the New York Post story shows that New York City officials are worried like crazy because they're getting 1,000 migrants a day into New York City, and that's before the end of Title 42. They believe it could go through the roof. So more on that coming up. The FBI did not comply with the House Oversight Committee's subpoena compelling the production of an FBI document that a whistleblower alleged describes as a criminal scheme involving then Vice President Joe Biden and a foreign national and relating to the exchange of money for policy decisions. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer subpoenaed the FBI for the document, which is an FBI-generated FD 1023 form, after a whistleblower alleged that the FBI and the Justice Department were in possession of it and claimed it detailed an alleged criminal scheme involving then Vice President Biden and a foreign national relating to the exchange of money for policy decisions. They said the whistleblower alleged the document includes a precise description of how the alleged criminal scheme was employed as well as its purpose. Comer gave the FBI until Wednesday at noon to comply with the subpoena, but instead the Bureau sent a letter explaining its confidentiality interest and the importance of protecting sources and methods to protect U.S. national security. This letter responds to your subpoena authorized on May 3rd, demanding the production of documents within 1 week. As this was your first communication with the FBI seeking this information, please know that the FBI is committed to beginning the constitutionally mandated accommodation process. The FBI is committed to working to provide the committee information necessary for your legitimate oversight interest while also protecting executive branch confidentiality interests and law enforcement responsibilities. But they never said whether they would eventually give it to Congress or not.
Right. Yeah, I just took it as another stall by the FBI, and I don't have any confidence that they'll ever cooperate. I don't know what would change that. Not being intimately familiar with the whistleblower process, I don't know what the whistleblower can say. At what point a whistleblower could come out and testify before Congress.
The FBI appreciates this opportunity to inform you of our confidentiality interests so that we can seek optimal accommodation through a realistic evaluation of each other's needs and avoid the polarization of disputes.
Yeah.
Well, they already made it clear they're not going to give him the document.
Yeah, right.
We can't give the document, but we will do everything to accommodate you in not giving you the document?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is that what?
Yeah. Oh, we're going to cooperate. You're just not going to get the document. Let us know what you need. We need the document. Yeah, we can't do that. But we're going to fully cooperate.
That'd be a question I'd ask Homer. How long is it going to take for the whistleblower process to complete, and therefore the whistleblower can testify before Congress?
Well, I guess the question would be, how long can the FBI management, whoever is in charge? I don't know. Obviously, Director Wray is involved in this, but the Inspector General, I would think, that office also would be involved in a whistleblower process. But can they slow roll that process? I have confidence that I don't have any confidence that it won't be slow rolled, and that's the fear. If they want to just play this out forever, they just sit on it and let it go forever. Now, the whistleblower has rights. I just don't know to what extent there is a right to expedite the process.
Well, remember, the whistleblower's claim is not just that this document exists.
Yeah, that it was.
But the Attorney General,
yeah,
and the Attorney General and the Department of Justice is covering this up.
Yeah, that they're sitting on it.
Right, they're sitting on it. That they're not investigating it. Mm-hmm. So it gets to the point then of, because this ends up in the courts then. This ends up in federal court, that we want this document. We have oversight of this. We have a whistleblower that says that you have a document and that precisely lays out the crime, the bribery, the pay for play of the president. The former vice president, who's now president, with a foreign national, and it dictates, or it actually precisely says what the actual crime is. So the courts look at that. I mean, do the courts wait to actually file suit on it until the whistleblower comes forward and documents? Here's what it says. Because once the whistleblower goes through the process, the whistleblower, he or she, can speak freely. And if it's not classified information, then at that point, will the courts come in and say, all right, the whistleblower has already, under oath, said this. Congress gets to see the document. Now, it may be that Congress gets to see the document even though it's not classified. Here's the thing. Will the intelligence agencies now classify it?
Or parts of it, enough to...
But it's not... Now, they didn't say it was classified, so I can see a judge saying, well, look, the whistleblower has completed the process. The whistleblower is ready to testify. You need to let the investigators see that. They can't go public with it, but they get to see it.
Yeah. I guess it depends on which part of the process, how far the process goes. Because I guess a defense lawyer would tell you that those that are being accused during this process by the whistleblower and what the whistleblower alleges, they have rights. So that process becomes a case in and of itself. I mean, it's not a court case. Now, the question is, the attorneys for the whistleblower, which I'm sure this person has attorneys, could they go to the courts and say, listen, the whistleblower law dictates that I get this kind of response, or that the process be followed? They're not following the process, which isn't necessarily retaliation. I mean, that's the whole reason you become a whistleblower, is to protect yourself from retaliation. It may not rise to retaliation, but it also isn't. It isn't abiding by the whistleblower law itself in bringing these allegations to light.
Here's a question. Since it seems like everything is classified, things that aren't even important, why wouldn't this be classified if they're saying we need confidentiality here because it may release sources and methods? Well, isn't that the normal kind of thing that you would classify because of sources and methods?
Right. Why isn't the document itself classified then?
When we classify everything that could lead back to sources and methods, then why is this not classified? Are you making this up? Sources and methods for what? Our intelligence agencies?
Well,
or is this, they need to, I think they need to explain further to a judge why it's not classified, yet they're using the classified document argument. It could lead to sources and methods, basically, of our intelligence agencies, because this has to do with something foreign, right?
Yeah.
But there is nothing that says you need to keep sources and methods of the FBI investigating something top secret. That doesn't get confidentiality. The public eventually gets to see what the FBI is doing when it comes to criminal activity, and this whistleblower who has to be in the FBI or the Department of Justice. This is somebody who is a law enforcement official is stating that the FBI and the Department of Justice is bearing this crime by the president.
All right, so there was a comment from an FBI spokesperson, this from the New York Post. It was a comment similar to the letter's contents. An FD 1023 form is used by FBI agents to record unverified reporting by a confidential human source. Documenting the information does not validate it, establish its credibility, or weigh it against other information verified by the FBI. Kind of pointing, in a way, similar to what I was saying about, okay, these are allegations, and the people who are alleged to have done these things also have their rights.
Well, that's what the FBI agent who hasn't seen it is saying.
Right.
It traditionally is.
Right.
The agent who has seen it says, no, it lays it out.
But the FBI isn't clear on, all right, you say that we can't divulge the sources, but you haven't, this isn't classified information.
Right.
So where does it fall?
And like I said, the whistleblower is saying, no, it lays it out.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody who hasn't seen it can say, well, it can be unverified. It can be unverified information. Can it be verified information?
Well, I think that's it. What they were saying is that the existence of the document is not necessarily proof. It just outlines it.
Right. Well, that's what he says.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't seen the document. The whistleblower is saying this precisely lays out what the FBI believes happened.
Right.
And he's stating it clearly, and he is the whistleblower. So, I mean, the stories are different between the whistleblower is saying and somebody who hasn't actually seen the document.
Right. And the question would be, all right, beyond that document, what is there beyond that to support what the allegations are from the whistleblower?
Well, here's the other thing, too. Does everything have to be unverified, or is 90% of it verified and 10% not, which would lead you to it, which you say, well, we're using the FD, 1023, because parts of it aren't verified. Well, what parts of it aren't?
Right.
Is the majority of it verified? And it seems like the whistleblower is saying, no, this lays out what actually happened.
Right. And if that's the case, it should be very easy to verify that that's exactly what happened.
Right. Especially since they've had it for a number of years.
Right.
And this was the updated one, right? That was the one that was updated.
Right.
So it's like, okay, when did this originally come out? How long has this been around? And has it been investigated? And because we know it, why, and Congress is looking at this, and the Department of Justice hasn't moved on anything. They haven't moved on anything yet.
Right.
On Hunter, we have no idea what they're going to do with Hunter Biden. It's a legit concern of oversight by Congress.
Yeah. Yeah.
866-90 Red Eye.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. So this is the House Oversight Committee. That's oversight is what they do. Oversight over, the FBI, oversight over the Department of Justice. They've got a whistleblower who has come forward. All right. They're saying, this is not a classified document. They didn't say it was classified. The FBI didn't say yesterday. It's unclassified. In the course of the investigation, even if you want confidentiality of this, because the FBI is saying we're having an investigation, why can't Comer and members of his committee see this document in order to continue their investigation with the whistleblower?
Behind closed doors.
Behind closed doors, right.
Why hasn't that been offered? My question is, are they asking? Or will that be the next measure that they take?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard Comer say what the next step's going to be.
Yeah,
yet.
I haven't. I would think that they would have already planned for that, believing that the FBI was going to turn them down. Then their next step was, okay, now we're going to ask them if we can see this document behind closed doors.
Look, you can't look at all this. You can't look at the LLCs that exist there and show the money that's transferred to members of the Biden family and how it passes through numerous LLCs.
Right.
Everyone knows this is how you hide money.
Right.
So you don't
somebody
see what
talk about
and anybody, any attorney general, any prosecutor knows this. They all know it.
Somebody talk about Joe Biden's and his family's business.
He said that.
Give us the history.
He said that to because I said, "What about Trump?" He goes, "Well, I might not agree with what Trump does in the business, what the Trump family does. That's not the point. I know what their business is." Yeah, it's been long established businesses. Now you may say, well, what's the motivation of other governments to work with them? And basically saying you can investigate that. But the problem is here. What differentiates this? Nobody knows what business the Bidens are in. There is no business that exists.
Well, think about this.
And that's the problem the Democrats can't win, by the way.
Joe Biden started in the Senate right about the time that Donald Trump was on the rise. If you think about it, Donald Trump's been famous about as long as Joe Biden's been in public service, maybe longer. But if you wanted to vet Trump and his businesses, but we welcome that, and you've had years to do that. He was president for 4 years. Fine. But at least you can point to it, like Donald's said, and you know what it is. What's Joe Biden's family's business? Because what we heard going into 2008, in the summer after he was on the ticket with Obama, he's one of the poorest members in the Senate. Mm-hmm. Poor Joe doesn't have much money. He's been focused on public service. Nobody's saying that now.
Well, you know something? I think one of the interesting things that caught my eyes when they said the three other members are the grandchildren. Because at that point, you're saying, why are grandchildren getting money from a number of LLCs passing through LLCs? What would be the purpose of the grandchildren getting it? Again, this is all, as any prosecutor will tell you, and that's why the banks reported all this. All this is highly suspicious activities in trying to move money so you don't know where the eventual source is, and to hopefully not let the IRS know what you're doing. Comer has said that over and over again, so yes. I believe they're looking at the fact of the Biden family members didn't report income.
Right.
I think that's part of what they're looking at.
One thing for sure, this is not going away.
No, it's not.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Carney, and I'm Gary McNamara. Here is James Comer on Fox News last night being asked about, what does it mean, the LLCs, the money being, sent through those LLCs.
Well, the purpose is to disguise who the sender is and to deceive the IRS so you don't have to pay taxes on it. So when Joe Biden talks about tax sheets, he doesn't need to look any further than his Christmas photo. I mean, the way these shell companies were created, they fit the definition of racketeering. I mean, you have shell companies that were created for the sole purpose of funneling money to the Biden family. If the president's son was providing a service to Romania or to China or to any of these other countries that we're going to disclose at a later time, well, why didn't the country just send the payment directly to Hunter Biden? Why did they have to funnel it to an associates LLC and then to 2 or 3 Biden LLCs and then send the payments sporadically down to Biden family members? Like you mentioned the grandchildren. I hated to bring up the fact that 3 grandchildren received wires because I don't believe those grandchildren did anything wrong. They just had the misfortune of having family members who were using them in their scheme to launder money, to try to deceive the IRS in order to not pay taxes and to disguise who the sender was to avoid getting in trouble for dealing with foreign nationals. So
let me ask you this.
It's really bad.
That was the point. When the grandchildren came out, yesterday I went, whoa, wow. Yeah. That to me was like that. I don't, maybe as an investigator, having the investigative mind, that went, whoa, wow.
Well, that's, okay. There it is. And look, if you want to say, well, we don't know the business of every family member of every president. Okay. You think there's nothing wrong, nothing shady about setting up a business with their grandkids?
When you can't identify what the business is.
And you've never talked about it? Hold on a second. What you're trying to say is Joe Biden has never bragged about his family earning millions of dollars? Huh. The guy who brags about things that never happened doesn't brag about these things that did happen?
Let's look at what Democrats had to say. House Oversight Committee ranking member Jamie Raskin dismissed new allegations about the Biden family's overseas business dealings made by House Republicans on Wednesday, claiming committee chairman James Comer failed to provide factual evidence to support his wild accusations about the president. Comer and committee Republicans said Wednesday that the Biden family and its business associates created a complicated web of more than 20 companies with the intent to conceal money received by foreign nationals. All right, did Raskin hit that specifically? Let me see. Raskin on Wednesday dismissed new allegations, saying Comer continues to bombard the public with innuendo, misrepresentations, and outright lies, recycling baseless claims from stories that were debunked years ago. Unable to implicate, and he doesn't give specifics, by the way, unable to implicate the president directly, committee Republicans have resorted to using cherry-picked bank records, misrepresentations about confidential and unverified bank reports known as SARS, and baseless conspiracy theories to attack the president's family, including his grandchildren. Again, no specifics. And in a case like this, you've got to go. If you want to make your point, you got to go point by point on it. What I thought it was interesting was after you had a few Democrats come out and attack the Republicans, that still wasn't enough for the major networks to cover the story with what they thought probably would be a decent defense by the Democrats to go after the Republicans. I don't know what happened here. I can't tell you. I don't have enough information. But we do know that when you have at least, and they're only at $10 million right now, $10 million going to Biden family members from foreign governments. Why? Is that something that the Republicans should just drop? Should politicians whose families are enriched, when we know that he was vice president of the United States and dealing with foreign governments, when we know that the Biden family is in no business of their own, should that be investigated, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat? And I think most people would say yes. I bet you would find landslide numbers near 90%, especially if you didn't use any names, just the generic questions. If a politician's family is enriched by millions of dollars and the money comes from foreign governments through LLCs, numerous LLCs, 16 at this point, should that be investigated? Should there be transparency as to what precisely, when the family says that they are in a business, that the American public should know what that business is? And I think, again, an overwhelmingly huge number of Americans, probably as close to 90%, because there's always 10% that have the opposite opinion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But as slam dunk as you can get would probably say, yeah, that needs to be investigated, especially when we don't know what the business, what they're in. There is no business.
Well, and here's another thing. Where are those Bidens? Where have they been all these years? You would think there would be one story about one of them. This is what they do. This is what they do for a living. His brother. I mean, the whole Hunter thing is laughable. But, okay, let's get out of the crack pipe zone. What about his brother? What about other family members? There hasn't been anything on them? Because if I'm one of those family members, and there is no wrongdoing here, and I know it, man, I'm talking to the leftist media all day, every day. I am not going to have my name dragged through the mud by the GOP, blah, 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 and everyone in our family has been a part of these LLCs, these businesses for years. Our entire hometown knows about it. Where is that?
When you have, as we laid out, this situation of the Biden family enriching themselves to at least, at what we know so far, and they said they're not done with this yet, at least $10 million that has come from foreign government entities, and again, paid not directly through them, but to LLCs, to at least 9 family members, including the children. When you have business partners that are willing to go under oath, who have publicly come forward, Bob Ulinsky, using him as an example, saying that Biden got 10%, when you know that the president has lied when he said he didn't know anything about, 2 lies, he didn't know anything about his son's business activities, and then said, and they brought this up yesterday, we never took any money from the Chinese. We know that's false. When you catch the president in a couple of huge whoppers, and you know he lied because the banking records show it, that he lied, the president lied, and we know from the voicemail and emails that the president knew about his son's business when the president has said numerous times he's known nothing about it. When you have all of that, and in addition, you have whistleblowers that are now coming forward, including one whistleblower who says the document exists inside the FBI that shows precisely one pay-for-play operation going on where it tells you the country that was buying the influence peddling from the president. It shows you the money, and it shows you precisely what the political favor is. Should Congress be investigating that? Should law enforcement be investigating that? Forget about it's the Biden family. Make it generic X candidate or generic X politician. Do you think that those are the things that should be investigated, under oath to find out if there's anything there? And that's when you lay it out. That's why the Democrats, I challenge the Democrats to argue any of the points we just made. They can't.
Right.
That's why it's all just generalized. You're cherry picking, you're this, you're that. Fine. Here's what we have. Is that worth investigating, or is that just pure partisanship? We know partisanship exists. Republicans look for Democrats that they can portray as crooks, and Democrats do the same thing. In the end, it isn't just the process or the incentive to do that. It's what evidence you get after you do the investigation.
Yep.
And I don't think Democrats can argue anything that I have just said, that we have said over the last 15 minutes, and say that it's not worth an investigation, that it's all just partisanship and there's nothing there. And every Democrat listening right now knows that. They know the weakness of the argument. It's also why the media, we believe, did not cover this story yesterday, because even though the Democrats criticized the Republicans, the media still does not want to take that side of the Bidens right now, and they even view the defense of Raskin and others as being extremely generic and weak and not specific, when they look every day and go, my God, this could be really, really bad, and everybody knows it. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows it.
Yeah.
Every Democrat knows it.
Yep. There's no way to avoid this. This is not something that lives in the bubble of today. So it's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time. If Comer is correct, if the whistleblower has something on this president, it's only a matter of time. So you can do the work. It's what Donald said. I'm handing you Pulitzer stuff here. You guys can take this story and then
Byron
point it to
Donald.
the
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And so and this is what I liked about what Donald was saying, throughout this. This is not just our work. This is the evidence. You can take it and run with it. I think he was also challenging them to dispute it. Because I would have said that. If you think we're wrong, do the story and take it apart. Go ahead. Start that.
We'll get that audio for you after the top of the hour.
Yeah. No, I think Byron Donalds was very strong yesterday.
866-90 Red Eye.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Over there is Eric Harley. Coming up following the top of the hour, we will get to that Representative Donald statement he made at Comer's press conference yesterday, where he said, look, this is Pulitzer stuff, telling the reporters, take this and run with it. This is better than Watergate. Comer sort of referenced that when he said, look, back in the Watergate time, you guys would have broke this, not us.
Right.
You guys don't cover any of this anymore. You don't do it, whether you don't have the capability. It's almost exactly what we said last night. Do they actually have the investigative chops to do it, or do they just wait for their sources, their prearranged sources, to give them a call, and then they write the story based on what their sources tell them?
Right.
Or do they really, really investigate? Because you think about this, this would have been, in the old days, the journalism story of the decade.
One way or the other. You
right.
either take it and you shred it and show that the GOP is out of line, if that's, because the activist wants to do that. And ask yourself, why haven't they?
Yeah.
Why didn't we see that by the end of the day? Somebody posting, actually, all of the liberal media posting, this is why, the GOP is so horrible, blah, 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 blah. You didn't see that. You didn't see that. Why haven't the Bidens come out defending themselves on this? You haven't seen that either.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across the USA and around the world, we are Red Eye Radio. Good morning. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Well, we have another busy day ahead of us. Coming up, we'll take a look at some of the inflation numbers in just a little bit more detail. We do want to play this audio. This is from Representative Donald of Florida yesterday. The House, part of the House Oversight Committee, holding their press briefing on the investigation into the Biden family and the influence peddling. And we just thought it was interesting because he had said yesterday, and when you mentioned that, I went, yeah, okay, we got to play this, because when you mentioned, Eric, that he said, this is Pulitzer Prize stuff, basically telling the reporters, this is, because if you think about it, this would be, if you could break this story, if you could break this story wide open, this is, and prove that there were things that were done illegally, like not reporting your income taxes, and that's why you did this sophisticated thing to actually successful influence peddling, where as the whistleblower is stating, the FBI has the evidence and believes, and there is evidence that he committed, he says precise. That's the one thing about the whistleblower. Whistleblower says this is precise stuff. It lays out how the president basically was involved in pay for play, a bribe. He took a bribe. He can tell you they can tell you the actual foreign policy decision that was made that was directly linked to the money. That's a hell of a charge when you think about it.
Yeah.
That's a hell of an allegation to make about someone. Nothing has leaked out yet. We know the document now exists. The FBI won't release it. They didn't come out and say, we don't have anything like that, so there's nothing we can do. End of story. They have, said they will cooperate, but they really can't cooperate. They said, we're going to accommodate you as much as we possibly can without ever let you see the document.
Yes.
Which is the only thing that you want.
Right. We're going to cooperate fully with the exception of the document.
Right. You want a cup of coffee? We'll give you a cup of coffee. The document? No, you can't. You can't look at that.
No.
And there's so much truth to it when you think about it. Watergate, that was a couple of years that they were investigating that, and they did that. They were putting out their stories, and remember, the Nixon administration was saying only the Washington Post is reporting this.
Yeah.
That went on for the longest time.
Right.
And then, boom. But you have right now, you think about this, you reverse this, you go back to the 70s, you reverse this, and it's a Republican that they're looking into, and Woodward and Bernstein would be salivating.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. Well, I mean...
And they'd be going to their source, deep state.
I don't know why you would be afraid of this one. I get it if this were Obama, right, in his first term. I know why. I guess I don't get it, but I know why they wouldn't do it then. Biden's not the future. He's not the future of the far left. He's not competent, and the majority of your viewers or readers don't want him to run again. And yet he is. And if there's nothing there, there's nothing there, and you can do the same old thing you always do as a liberal activist reporter, is go after the GOP and say, see, we found nothing.
Yeah.
But if there is something there, you get credited for a massive story.
More key evidence is you had, for example, Jamie Raskin, and you had other very liberal Democrats in the House in safe districts go after the Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
You notice you didn't have a senator do it.
No, you didn't.
That's a
good point.
That's a bigger pool. That's a bigger pool of voters.
Right.
When you're dealing with a state, and as you notice, when it was pointed out by Newsbusters, and thanks to Kevin and all the great folks over there who have the hardest job in the world. They monitor the liberal media 24/7.
They have to watch a lot of it.
Now, Kevin told us it's not a problem for him.
They love their job. I'm glad that we have them there. I'm grateful.
Sorry, I just picture Kevin as Kevin Bacon. It has to be almost like
every day, every
single day. Well, thank you, sir. May I have another? What did I do to deserve this?
Yeah.
How did I get this job?
Yeah. No, they take it. They love shredding it too, and he does that all day on Twitter too.
But I said, boy, am I going to see the article? Today when I come into work that says the mainstream media didn't cover any. The Santos thing, they covered it, but nobody's really defending Santos. There's nobody out there defending him.
No.
The Republicans want him gone.
Right.
There's nobody defending him.
Right.
But they all covered that as the lead story. And think about this. The President of the United States, whether you believe it's legit or not, But the President of the United States officially, in this press conference, it takes everything over the last couple of weeks, which is the accusation that the president took a bribe, because that's all part of this.
Right.
The president took a bribe and did a favor for a foreign government, and a whistleblower says it, and they're laying out the money trail of enriching the Biden family through our enemies. And they actually laid it out. And on social media later on in the day, you saw they should have done it in the press conference. They didn't, but they showed the money, basically the money flow chart of where the money went, and nobody will cover it. Well, why wouldn't the media cover it when if everything we're told is true? You can look at it this way. If everything we're told is true, it would be the biggest political scandal presidential scandal in American history.
Yeah.
Just because
For sure.
of how big the influence peddling was. And then if bribery, that's why I said if everything was found to be true, then the bribery in there, biggest one ever. If not, if it's all false, it would be the biggest setup outside of maybe Hillary Clinton of the Trump campaign, but it would be the biggest setup by the Republican Party ever, right?
Oh, yeah.
So either way, it's a huge story.
Right. No, that's a good point. And if it's got the potential of being the biggest story because Biden did do something, then it's huge. And if that means on the other side of it that the GOP worked together to bring up these false allegations, if it's not true,
right,
which would also be a massive story. Why aren't you doing it?
Or if it's somewhere in the middle, it's still a really interesting story of how we got to this story and why, if everything was legit, you would be setting up all these LLCs. Somebody in business explained it to us. Oh, by the way, I did go through all of Real Clear Politics for the last 36 hours. Nothing. Not one editorial defending the president on this whole influence peddling. Not one. Can't find it. And, that's the problem that Democrats have, and they know they have the problem. Let's go to Representative Donald yesterday. Here's what he had to say.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks for being here, everybody. Look, a couple things. First, what we're seeing here, what we're witnessing with the Biden family, frankly, is just a web of concealment, of deception. A lot of people would say corruption. But let's be very clear. You have this many companies involved, this velocity of transactions, size of transactions. Like my colleagues have said, this is not how normal businesses operate. I had the ability with Chairman Comer and other members of the committee to go over to the Treasury building and review documents. And having read those documents, one thing became pretty crystal clear, that there were many people who had serious questions about the transactions and about the velocity of these transactions, and they either get very, very deep into concealment, hiding money, shifting money, and for the purpose, we don't know, because one thing everybody in this room and the American people definitely know is that the Biden family doesn't really have a business. There is no business structure around this family except politics. And since Joe Biden has spent decades in the Senate, served 8 years as vice president, and is now president of the United States, and the family's getting money from various countries and foreign businesses through various shell companies and this web of LLCs. I mean, guys, you in the press, this is easy pickings. I'm giving you Pulitzer stuff here. Like, all you have to do is literally look at our memo and see the level of detail upon which they have created this. And it's very, very frustrating. We have now been able to clearly see that the Biden's associates, like Rob Walker, Eric Sherman, has been discussed, created at least 16 companies while Joe Biden was vice president of the United States. 16 companies created while he was vice president. Now the list is 20, and as we continue our investigation, that list is growing. And like I said before, the question is to serve what purpose? And the purpose of all these companies being created is to conceal money that the Biden family has been gaining because Joe Biden has been sitting at the upper echelon of our politics for almost 5 decades. That is the entire purpose here. Here's an example of what I mean. You have Rosemont Seneca Partners, Rosemont Seneca Advisors, Rosemont Seneca Technology Partners, RSP Holdings, RSTP2 Alpha, RSTP2 Bravo, Rosemont Seneca Thornton, Rosemont Seneca Bohai. I want to make sure I pronounce it right. Bohai, B-O-H-A-I. And the list goes on and on. Cycling through this many companies serves no legitimate purpose. And as somebody who actually worked in banking, I did that long before I came here. Whenever there was like this many companies just laying all over the place, and you see wire transfers and cashier checks over here going to random members of the family for no apparent purpose at the size and velocity at which all of this was being conducted, the only logical conclusion of a financial professional is you are concealing money. Let me restate this. You are concealing money from either the IRS or from credit agencies or from other people in general. That's the only reason you set up a structure like this. Some of these companies were connected to Hunter's personal professional company, Oswego, or Skinny Atlas, Scale Atlas, however you want to pronounce it. And the list goes on. And Mr. Biggs, he talked about Hudson West 3 and some of those other issues that were going on as well. One thing I want to make sure is that all of this has happened and Joe Biden is aware. Nobody in this room can logically sit here and say that the President of the United States had no idea that these companies were being formed while he was Vice President of the United States. And I will add you, he was probably in better mental shape then than he is today. I'll throw that out there. And so what this committee is going to continue to do is pursue this investigation. We are going to continue to document, and we're going to provide that information to all of you in the press. So to help you, and frankly, like Congresswoman May said, and probably help the DOJ along with their investigation. One quick note, it's interesting that the Department of Justice has been investigating Hunter Biden for quite some time, and we seem to just never really get anywhere. And so I think that's also interesting as well. I wonder what's...
There you go. But I think... the point he makes is because people go LLCs, that's the creation of companies. Companies that provide what service? Right. They're companies that transfer money.
What do they do?
Receive money and So not only with the Biden business, all the LLCs, what business were they in? Nobody can identify what the business was.
And Donalds points out, too, that these are created while he was in office. All of a sudden, the family just, boom, blossoms collectively into a $10 million business? Wow. I'd like to know how to do that. Oh, wait, I think I do.
866-90 Red Eye.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on compliance, safety, accountability. Drivers should be familiar with how their actions affect their motor carrier's compliance, safety, accountability, or CSA score in the 7 basic categories. The driver fitness score is based on the physical and medical qualifications of drivers. The vehicle maintenance category requires drivers to know how to inspect CMVs and secure cargo. Hours of service compliance relies on drivers keeping accurate records of duty and abiding by hours of service limits. The unsafe driving category is affected by unsafe driving behaviors such as failing to wear a seatbelt or obey traffic laws. Drivers should understand the drug and alcohol prohibitions to prevent hurting their carrier's controlled substances and alcohol basic score. And drivers who transport hazmat must know how to safely transport hazardous materials according to the regulations. The final basic category, crash prevention, is based on how many crashes a motor carrier has been involved in, so drivers must know how to drive safely to avoid crashes. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller & Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Friday Radio. I'm Gary McNamara, along with Eric Harley. So, all right, looking at inflation, core inflation, which excludes food and energy, better predictor than overall inflation of underlying price trends. Core inflation, 5.5% in April, down from 5.6% in March. On a monthly basis, core prices rose 0.4%, equivalent to 5% at an annual rate, in line with the past 4 months. Excluding shelter, core services prices, which the Fed watches closely, rose a much more tame 0.1% for the month. And I think the CPI went from 5 to 4.9, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's where we are. And the main concern is, especially with core inflation, is that the fact that we're going to see inflation at least through 2024.
Yeah, I don't know anybody that's making the prediction now that, in fact, what I'd like to know is, when do they see, is anybody trying to predict when we might see 2% or less? I haven't seen that anywhere. How far out would that be in the forecast? And it's not before the election of 24. I mean, and then what happens, by the way, if there are other elements? Political pressure on the Fed to either stop raising rates or reverse them. I mean, I think the pressure right now from the markets is, and from the economic conditions, is to raise them more. But
look at this here. In a year, year-over-year prices. Eggs, 21.4%. Motor vehicle repair, 20.2%.
Wow.
Motor vehicle insurance, 15.5%.
Yeah.
Let me see. Sugar and sugar substitutes, 13.2%. Bakery products, 12.9%. Rent of primary residence, 8.8%. Food away from home, 8.6%. Electricity, 8.4%. Financial services, 8.4%. Food in general, 7.7%. Food at home, 7.1%. New cars, 5.3%. Airfares actually down a touch, 0.9%. From year to year, wow, they really skyrocketed last year from 21 to 22 then.
Yeah.
So good, you know you want to listen again with our podcast, available on our app and at redeyeradioshow.com.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara, looking at some of the other inflation numbers. We just told you all the things that went up, some things drastically in price. Things that have come down in the last year, fresh fruit is down, 5.4%. Used cars and trucks, minus 6.6%. This may be the best news ever. Get ready to celebrate.
Okay.
Bacon down 8.9%. Major appliances, 10.4%. I told you this yesterday when I was talking about, how expensive hotels are and even airline flights, even though it says that airline flights from a year ago came down 0.9%. They're still a lot higher than where they were pre-COVID.
Yeah.
A lot higher. And and you asked about car rental. I said, no, car rentals are way down. Car rentals skyrocketed in 2022. Remember? They sold so many of their vehicles. They didn't have the vehicles.
Yeah.
I remember. I mean, it was last year, 2022. If it normally cost, I could probably even look into it. I think I'm renting a car for like 4 full days, and it was probably a little over $300. Okay, I did that for the summer already. Last year, I had to wait till the last week when it finally came down in price a little bit, but I believe I paid around $500. But if I had booked it earlier, they were up $700, $800, $900 to rent a car for 4 days. It was unbelievable last year.
Yeah, September I went through that,
Yep.
and it was sticker shock. I didn't really have a choice, so I had to pay it.
Gasoline down 12% from last year. Health insurance. Now, this is a surprise. I want to investigate this. Health insurance down 15.8% in a year. Did it skyrocket during COVID?
I would have to think that the overall cost did for insurance companies, so that the rates went up. I mean, I wouldn't know on the open market.
Let me be. I don't mean to be morbid here. I'm just actually trying to look at statistics. You know, we talk about the fact that during COVID, that one of the reasons that Social Security, they said, would go on for another year or two, and this is until the inflation hit and they had to give the raises, and now it's back down to where it was before. But remember, they had increased Social Security solvency for another 2 years because of the number of elderly that died because of COVID. Could that be a reason?
I would think that it would be the opposite, that during COVID, the expenses of treating someone, especially for COVID, would skyrocket, and then over the last year, they would come down.
They would come down then, okay.
Being treated.
And fuel oil down 20.2%. We talked about, though, just in the last couple of weeks. I mean, I've seen gasoline just crash.
Yeah.
Gasoline just a couple of weeks ago was up near $3.50 a gallon. Now it's in the 280s. You know, it's dropped 60 cents in just a couple of. And when we went, why is that? And then we saw the usage for gasoline. Just gas usage down week to week a couple of weeks ago was almost 1 million barrels of gasoline less in 1 week. Now, is that a sign of a recession? We don't know. I guess we shall see. But those are some of the numbers out there. But when you look at still a lot of the things that matter to people, rent or primary residence still up there high. You know, food. You look at the majority of food. There are some food items that are down, but for the most part, food is still up way over the average of what inflation, is. Motor vehicle repair, 20.2%.
I would
motor vehicle insurance, 16%.
On the rent thing, it is a lagging indicator. That's one of the sets of data that is lagging. And I'd like to know what the private sector is saying on rents right now, because they said, a month ago or so, that rents are dropping dramatically and that the CPI numbers are behind. I forget how far behind, but it's a matter of months. So the point being, if rent is dropping dramatically, if you see, we know the demand for diesel is down. National average is 4.04, and it was far above $5 at one point. And now the question would be those indicators right there, the demand for fuel and also the demand for housing. Because when the rents drop, you look to, okay, what's the behavior? The behavior is more people living together. Vacating 2 areas and consolidating into one, and that is what you were seeing about a month ago, is according to one major apartment company, they were saying that the rents were dropping dramatically and that the CPI numbers are lagging. So I'd love to get an update on that to see, because that gives you an indication. At some point, it was bound to break. There was going to be a threshold that you reach, and that's going to be your biggest expenditure. So your choices are, move in with someone else or live in your car.
Well, I promise, you just reminded me of something, because I promised to monitor over the last couple of years that where I live like on a peninsula.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so there's limited growth on it. For example, when I moved in 16 years ago, by the way, I didn't know it was going to be a Democrat precinct when I moved in, because I was one of the first in. I want to make that clear.
They wanted to join you and live next to you.
Democrats wanted to join to be influenced by me?
No, they just not influenced. They just wanted to live next to you, probably trolling.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't get any trolling. Oh, my neighbors are fine. But when I moved in, I'm going to guess there was about, I'm guessing 2,500 homes in all the development, and now there's probably 4,000 to 4,500. Well, they're about done with the expansion out there, and there was one more development near me, and I'm going to guess it's going to be about 200 homes. And they've been working on that, because it was fields and forest land, and over the last 2 years they've put in all the roads and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And then about 2 months ago I looked at it and go, okay, all the roads are in, they're open, you see all the lots. They put the trailer in, for the home builders to start doing it, and I'm waiting and waiting. A month goes by, 2 months go by, nothing. I'm like, boy, is there? And all of a sudden, housing's going up. I've seen 2 houses in the last week.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's, and I just wonder, because my house keeps going up in value. So there are still places, for example, in the United States where housing is rebounding again, and I'm rebounding more than I thought I would.
I didn't expect to rebound this quickly.
Neither did I. No. And C, since we're paying property taxes, we're not selling, we want the value to be as low as possible.
I would like it to stabilize and not be such a hot market, at least until I'm 65.
That's right. I don't have to,
you don't have to worry about that now, and
I don't have to deal with it.
I still have a ways to go.
It doesn't matter, because it's right. I'm in compression. Is that what they call it? Compression?
Yes.
In the state of Texas, they just passed this. Because I have reached retirement age, I have reached compression, which means my property taxes. I guess that means the state, right? Or is it I don't know if it's the whole thing or just the state portion of it.
I want to say it was the school taxes, but I'd have to go back and look at the law.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will start seeing a decrease. Every single year it will go down more, because I'm an old man. I'm Uncle Leo.
Mm-hmm. Hello. Yeah.
And so I guess I don't care. It can go up as much as it wants, right?
Well, I mean, the valuation, which is also limited because our state constitution was amended a while back, and so they can only raise it so much. They can change the market value. They can raise it to the if it jumps, if it doubles in 1 year, they can put that on your statement.
Right.
But they can only raise the taxable amount by a certain percentage each year. So yours were frozen, but now after retirement age, it's consolidated, compressed, squeezed.
Yeah, not all of it was frozen, but because I still went up about $150. But
the question is, because when they did the limit, when they capped the amount percentage wise that you could raise, the taxable amount, there was pressure on the other taxing entities that weren't forced to do that, and a number of them kind of fell in line and said, "Oh, we're going to do the same thing." It's the same politically. It's the same appeal, and of course, on the local basis, that appeal is immediate.
Mm-hmm.
It's people right there, and I love that effect. Don't know if that's the case for everyone, but certainly those other taxing entities will give it consideration, because if they want to be mean to all of us old folks, then fine.
You know, I just realized I'm almost the age where I can claim victimhood.
Yeah?
I can be a victim.
Right.
Of everything.
Yeah.
Ageism.
Mm-hmm. That's all you got? Is that it?
I was thinking slowism.
See, I do this with my grandkids.
Moving slowism.
Do this with my grandkids. You know, when they're making fun of me, making jokes, that's abuse of the elderly. And then they laugh even harder.
Yeah. I want my nephew to stop asking me when I see him, though. So are you okay getting older?
Yeah. Do I need to get you a chair?
And the best thing is how, for example, my nephew and my great-nephew think when I talk to them.
Yeah.
And it's just like, but you can't play basketball like you used to.
Yeah.
And what about hockey? Go, yeah, but my golf game's getting better. And it's like, there are others you have to explain to them, and they've known me my whole life. Yeah. And when you explain to them that there are other things that you can do instead of sports, they look at you like, are you out of your mind? You are losing it, aren't you? Oh, you must be old. Because you're saying you're okay without it.
Yeah.
And we know you're lying.
The YouTube algorithm floated a Billy Idol live concert clip into my algorithm for some reason, because I watch music videos, and I like to watch live performances that are recent. So
he's old.
He was doing Rebel Yell, and this is how you know when it's old. You know, the whole thing, the way he would throw the punch during the song. The way he did it from this year's and I love Billy Idol. He's a great guy, American citizen now. And the way he was throwing the punch, remember the chair aerobics they were doing for the elderly back in the 80s? You would sit in a chair.
Yeah.
And then just kind of just barely lift your hand. You could do, it was for people who had limited movement, and it was great for that class. But quite frankly, that's what Billy Idol looked like he was doing, chair aerobics.
I saw Billy Idol before he was ever popular. He used to hang around the Continental, which was the CBGBs of Buffalo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And nobody knew who he was. And then a couple of years later, he was huge. But his band used to play there, and nobody knew who he was.
Mm-hmm. And now he's doing chair aerobics on stage.
866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. He is Eric Harley. So what are we going to go through today? Oh, that's right. Everything's now, I don't care whether it's a Comer investigation or whatever, unless the whistleblower comes forward today and testifies, but that's not going to happen. But I think everything's going to be Title 42. Everything's going to be focused on the border.
Yeah.
When you and I played that audio cut earlier, I could see the video, and it was former Obama official, Department of Homeland Security Director Jay Johnson on, and talking about the fact of the NBC report that the Biden administration is just going to allow people to just come into the country. No court date.
Yeah.
No contact.
Yeah.
Just come in because
come on in.
They can't stop it now.
Right.
And he's like, this is a terrible idea. And they're showing all the photos of people coming in right now and the streets of El Paso, and it looks like a dystopian nightmare.
Yeah, it will
Really
be a
just-
nightmare.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.